called existential climate crisis, despite the fact that poll after poll after poll after poll shows that climate change is one of the issues the American people care least about. I think they care about jobs. I think they care about the economy. I think they care about war and peace and maybe the rise in the military with the Chinese. I mean, the fact that the 2/3 of the American people understand the importance of the president standing up to China is amazing. I mean, and the president was right in literally pointing out that our farmers have been heroic in supporting the president. I mean, he's right, because in the short term, we're taking a hit. You know, they're warriors in the trade war. That's what the president said. It's not easy, but it has resulted, the president saying these unfair trade deals. The president does not want, in any way, shape, manner, or form, does not want a trade war with China. What he wants is free trade. What he wants also is fair trade. And when you have nearly $500 billion and they close the markets to just about every product you can think of, everything in manufacturing, our automobiles, our great farmers, and what we produce each and every day, every year. And when they're closing off the markets, they've got an unfair advantage. They are taking huge advantage of we, the American people, and we're all paying a price for it. Anyway, they just announced, according to the Washington Examiner, fake news CNN, that they're going to spend 7 hours showing, again, the Democratic presidential hopefuls debating issues involving gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender concerns, and I guess another 7-hour town hall. This got so insane, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, part of me wants to laugh. Part of me wants to cry, because they have bought hook, line, and sinker into every bit of insanity proposal that we know will destroy the American economy. There's no ambiguity about this. The idea, the new Green Deal, that everything's going to be free, whether you're willing or unwilling to work. We're going to have government schools from pre-K, kindergarten, all the way through college. Great. More years to indoctrinate our kids into liberal socialist thinking, as recent polls have actually borne out that it's actually working, sadly, for the sake of the country, because we don't have freedom, you don't have liberty, if you don't have capitalism, and you make all these false assurances so that this group of people, the Democrats, with their, look how Solyndra worked out. Look how, keep your doctor, keep your plan and save money worked out. Look at, we're all paying more money. Millions lost their doctors, millions lost their plans, and tens of millions of Americans only have one choice when it comes to health care. Great job. Great promises fulfilled. Nobody's paying attention that, the Finnish government, the great role model, we need to be more like Finland. That government collapsed under the weight of their socialist utopia. But we're going to get rid of oil and gas, the lifeblood of our economy. That's what they want. That is at the heart of this. But really, it's more of a political agenda. It's so that they can support, in their minds, the idea. Remember, capitalism is bad. The new Green Deal is more about redistribution. The wealth tax is about redistribution. The carbon tax is about redistribution. Tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. Famously said by Governor Cuomo in New York. Then the rich start leaving. And New York is losing more people than any other state, even California, but they're a close second. And they're leaving. People are leaving because they're being chased away by punitive policies that disincentivize people from investing and living. Look at the beautiful coast of California. Who would want to live there? Forget it. When you're paying a 13.5% state income tax, then you're paying all the other insanity taxes and free health care for anybody, legal, illegal immigrants. Everyone gets free. Well, then a mile from Nancy Pelosi's house, what do you have? You have what is now evolved into a drug den where needles are all over the place, people shooting up every day all over the place. People have no place to urinate or defecate, so that's happening right there in public, 1 mile from her house in one direction, 1 mile from her office in another direction. And, of course, no end in sight. Governor Newsom, great dreams of being president one day. He says he will fix it all, but he's been in let's see, politics, lieutenant governor, 8 years, mayor of San Francisco, 22 years he's been doing this. A lot of good he's done. Now, I don't know if it was, I don't know. I mean, there's so many dumb, bad things from Buttigieg saying fighting climate could be more challenging than winning the Cold War.
We have to actually unify the country around this project. And that means bringing people to the table who haven't felt that they've been part of the process. I mean, this is the hardest thing we will have done, certainly in my lifetime as a country. This is on par with winning World War II, perhaps even more challenging than that. Does anybody really think we're going to meet that goal if between now and 2050, we are still at each other's throats? It's not going to happen. We've got to figure out a way to rally, and that means everybody from cities to farms to the federal government to the international community. I'm prepared to lead us.
Okay. Now, we literally need re-education seminars for people like the Squad, Buttigieg. First, if Buttigieg can't run South Bend, Indiana, and this is not South Bend, it's the home of Notre Dame. I mean, come on, this is a great city in this country, the heartland. He's going to fight climate change. It could be more challenging than winning World War II. Tammy Bruce had a great line the other night on the TV show, and she went into how this is like the narcissistic generation. You know, when Ocasio-Cortez is filming every aspect of her life, or you've got, Robert Francis Beto Bozo, filming himself getting a haircut. And, Ocasio-Cortez saying, well, there's never been a generation like ours that has ever stood up and fought. And I'm like, hello, the civil rights movement, pay attention. I'm wondering, did they ever teach this in school? The comparisons to Nazi Germany, comparing detention centers that, let's see, have soccer fields, rec facilities, TVs, telephones, beds, blankets, pillows, cots, whatever you need, and baby formula and diapers and medical care around the clock and medicines, whatever you need. That's for people who broke our laws and entered the country illegally. But we're going to compare that to the death camps in Auschwitz in Nazi Germany, like our colleague Tlaib said, Congresswoman Tlaib. Buttigieg, saying that climate change so much so that it will take a nationwide effort. The amount of money they are proposing to throw at this is staggering in so many different ways. $16 trillion all the way down to $2 trillion, or $1.7 trillion is the minimum. Where is this money going to come from? How do we live without oil and gas? Sanders, well, he has some pretty wacky ideas that, of course, one of them is a lot of taxpayers out there willing to pay more in taxes. Well, how about you? He's a multimillionaire. How did the socialist senator all these years become a multi-millionaire and own all of his properties? I mean, it gets insane. But he actually went and he had a question, and, the issue of population control comes in, and literally empowering women, educating everyone on the need to curb population growth.
The planet cannot sustain this growth. I realize this is a poisonous topic for politicians, but it's crucial to face. Empowering women and educating everyone on the need to curb population growth seems a reasonable campaign to enact. Would you be courageous enough to discuss this issue and make it a key feature of a plan to address climate catastrophe?
Well, Martha, the answer is yes. And the answer has everything to do with the fact that women in the United States of America, by the way, have a right to control their own bodies and make reproductive decisions. And the Mexico City Agreement, which denies American aid to those organizations around the world that allow women to have abortions or even get involved in birth control, to me is totally absurd. So I think, especially in poor countries around the world, where women do not necessarily want to have large numbers of babies, and where they can
listen, I just can't. He's now under fire. We're going to populate. What are we going to tax people that have children? Where are these taxpayers that want to pay more? Or Joe Biden, Joe 30330, the new Green Deal doesn't go too far. He's not opposed to it. That's their moderate. That's what he said. Andrew Yang saying they all support the new Green Deal's goal of banning commercial air travel. That was said last night. Elizabeth Warren saying Americans need to make changes when it comes to using straws and eating cheeseburgers. Why the obsession with cheeseburgers? We're going to now eat consumption of cows because of the flatulence involved from cows. And it gets even more insane with the population growth issue, a key feature of addressing the climate, Bernie Sanders saying, or Kamala, well, take action. We're going to reduce the amount of red meat Americans eat. I'm telling you, if this happens, they get elected. We got to invest in cows. Remind me, Linda, please, because we'll slaughter a bunch of cows and we'll save the meat and we'll sell it at a huge profit, because that's apparently going to be outlawed at some point. And then, of course, the call for new taxes, not only a wealth tax from Elizabeth Warren, we're going to have a new carbon tax. Joe Biden wants to shut down 27% of our electric grid. Electricity generated by coal power. Back to Kamala. She will ban American energy manufacturing through fracking. Well, we're energy then dependent again. We're now finally, for the first time in 75 years, energy independent. That means, the Straits of Hormuz, geopolitically speaking, are not as important as it used to be to us, or begging countries that hate our guts, but we have to import oil because we're too stupid, even though we have more resources than they do, to use it to help Americans get wealthy and raise the standard of living of every American. And Joe Biden, of course, got confused about his Wall Street fundraisers work in the fossil fuel industry. Oopsie daisy. But then back to Buttigieg. My father fought 4 years in the Pacific. You want to tell, I know he passed away, but you want to tell him that climate change was more challenging than beating fascism, Nazism, and Imperial Japan? I don't think so. Biden, my whole career has been to take on the polluters. That's a lie. Bernie Sanders open to discussing the population control. Sanders, there'll be no federal assistance for people who want to rebuild their homes in a disaster-prone area. Oh, now that they're going to penalize you where you live. Yang goes back to a possible confiscation of gas vehicles. We're going to have a buyback program for our cars. Great. And then saying, let's spray sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere to stop climate change. Or Castro suggesting I'll make it easier for Americans to file lawsuits over environmental racism and we must use public schools to push global warming. Well, let's indoctrinate the kids. I guess it's 11 years we have left, he said. You look at this, ban fracking, carbon taxing, pollution, ending oil and gas exploration and extraction on public lands, banning nuclear energy. Think Fred Flintstone, because that's about the world they're talking about. The time this is all said and done. All right. I am worked up. This is insanity. This will drive this country into a depression almost instantaneously if we get rid of the lifeblood of our economy. And we will take the greatest potential wealth creation, our resources that would raise the standard of living of every American. Remember, 80, 100 grand, they'll train you to drive a truck. You can buy a house and a new truck and a new car. Hey, Norton Security, look, we all send texts and emails, right? Well, guess what? If you don't encrypt them with a virtual private network, that means people are going to be able to steal your information. Now, you want to protect every email you send or receive, every text you send or receive. This is where Norton.com/VPN comes in, virtual private network. They use bank-grade encryption. They hide your online activity. Everything you send and receive, text, emails, doesn't matter. It will be protected and encrypted. That means your PC, your Mac, your mobile device, and you want even Wi-Fi password protected stuff they can get into. It'll work on everything. And by the way, you log in once, you install it, you log in and let it run in the background. It won't bother you again. Just go to norton.com/VPN. The best part is it's only $3.33 a month. Is your privacy worth $3.33 a month? I have it. I suggest you get it too, because everybody's out to get your information.
Fighting the Trump-hating liberal media one day at a time. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, as we roll along, so this is all madness, what we heard last night. We'll go through and play more after the news at the bottom of the half hour. So I was listening to Bernie last night in particular. A lot of people don't know this. We've covered the history in the past. I won't go over all the details. It's so repugnant, evil, repulsive, that the founder of Planned Parenthood was this woman, Margaret Sanger, favoring abortions. It was, especially for children that were African Americans, because she was a racist and believed they were inferior. I mean, everyone seems to forget this in the discussion. I know our friend Dr. Alveda King knows this really, really well. And the quotes that we have put up and told you about in the past, I mean, it is horrible. It is horrible. And I'm listening to Bernie last night when he responds to this population growth. The answer has everything to do with the fact that women in the U.S. have a right to control their own bodies, make reproductive decisions. And the Mexico City Agreement, which denies American aid to those organizations around the world that allow women to have abortions or even get involved in birth control, to me is totally absurd, especially in poor countries around the world where women do not necessarily want to have large numbers of babies, and where they can have the opportunity through birth control to control the number of kids they have is something I very, very strongly support. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, we can be the world's wealthiest nation. We should view our energy resources as ours, the American people. Raise our standard of living, and in the process, the world's, if we were smart. The opposite of what they're saying.
Talk to Sean Hannity? Check him out on Twitter. You can find him under @SeanHannity.
All right, 25 till the top of the hour, 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. This news about the ACLJ, the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, and the lawsuit that they filed yesterday, and the Freedom of Information lawsuit that they filed against the FBI DOJ, because they want to see the correspondence about possible spies in the White House of Donald Trump from day one, reporting back to, Mr. Super Patriot liar. He is a liar. Anyone who tells you any different is not telling you the truth. Jim Comey is a liar. And, Jim, come on the show. I'll give you 3 hours here, and I'll give you an hour on TV. And I'll point out, when you told Donald Trump in January of 2017, before he was sworn in, that the dossier was salacious and unverified, you didn't tell him that you signed off in October on the first of what would be 3 signatures from you that said that it was verified, the dossier, the bulk of information that you used to spy on him. And then you say you're not a spy. Oh, yeah, you're a spy. You are spying. We know it. Everybody knows it. You're lying. And you're not really living in reality. So we got that. We got Devin Nunes filing the racketeering lawsuit against Fusion. He'll join us. This is a big deal. I mean, literally how they were trying to, by attacking Nunes the way they did, trying to stop him and derail him in his investigation of Fusion GPS. It's $9.9 million lawsuit. So we're going to get into that today. We have Kellyanne Conway coming up today. And also, I know the China trade war, I know a lot of people saying that, well, it's hurting. Well, it turns out that it's not hurting the way everyone predicted. I know everyone's trying to talk us into a recession, talk down the economy. But the media mob, they've been doing all of this. Rich millionaires like Bill Maher, they don't give a flying rip about the forgotten men and women, the 7 million Americans now that have jobs because Donald Trump became president, the 7 million that aren't on food stamps any longer because Donald Trump became president, the millions that got out of poverty because of the policies of Donald Trump. I guess it's easy for him to hope and pray for a recession. And I guess it's fine for the media mob. You know, I've said it many years, except with few exceptions. You know, everyone in the media, they're a bunch of overpaid, spoiled brats. And you know what? They get paid to be hacks like, you know, the media mob. They just go with lies and conspiracy theories. But U.S. payrolls for August far exceeded expectations. And what we found is the company payrolls, went up by 195,000 in August. I thought we were in a recession. Well above Wall Street estimates, according to a report, ADP, Moody's Analytics. They surveyed the Dow Jones. They were only thinking, it's not going to be a good month. Turned out to be a good month. Unbelievable. Mark Zandi, a Hillary Clinton cheerleader, said, businesses are holding firm on their payrolls despite the slowing economy. Okay, he's been predicting economic disaster ever since Trump won the White House. And now we've seen just the opposite of the Biden-Obama years. We've been following closely the Hurricane Dorian. We're now just really a little bit worried about it. Just left Charleston for the most part. It got stronger. Cat 2 winds 120 miles an hour on average. Gusts higher. Now we're looking at North Carolina, Wilmington, and other places, then Cape Hatteras. But it looks like by literally what amounts to 50 miles offshore, we avoided a disaster. For a quick update, we got Joe Bastardi, weatherbell.com, official meteorologist of the Sean Hannity Show. You called it accurately. You said it would get stronger. It did get stronger again. It looks like it's past Charleston at this point. We've got really North Carolina and Cape Hatteras, and that's about it, right, that we have to worry about?
Yeah, well, but the thing is, Sean, it gets stronger and it gets more focused, and then it starts, if you folks have been watching, it starts bouncing around the coast. In other words, it tries to approach and then it comes back out. That will only work till just after Cape Fear. For once you get up toward Cape Lookout, Cape Hatteras, this is coming up the length of the Outer Banks. And it's going to be a very bad hurricane in what is, a major resort area for the United States. The populations go up and down there. In the winter, there's not that many people out there, but it certainly is going to be a big blow to that area. And again, from Morehead City northeast to Virginia Beach, this will be worse than Florence as far as wind gusts go. And that area, and I also think the Outer Banks, it's going to be worse than what Irene was back in 2011 for them. So I think it's going to pretty much maintain its intensity overnight, and the landfall, it's probably the eye wall is going to go over Cape Fear for a while this evening, which means they'll get racked. Wilmington's been getting racked pretty bad, but, they're inland somewhat. And then it goes inland at about Cape Lookout, comes up just to the west of Hatteras Island, then goes out between Hatteras and Duck, and then sideswipes southeast New England very late tomorrow night and Saturday morning, and then we'll be done with it.
Well, look, I think in many ways we dodged a potential disaster. I mean, if you don't believe that, look at what happened in the Bahamas. I mean, it breaks my heart.
Well, Charleston has had a lot of flooding. Remember, it's like it was with Matthew. And by the way, folks, we're going to shut this down for 2 weeks as far as threats to the United States go. But I think between September 20th and October 10th, I'll be back talking to you again. Put it that way.
Earmark that prediction, and we will play it if you end up being right. Now, it is hurricane season, so, I mean, It wouldn't be that far of a stretch, but you're predicting specific dates. And because we love to give you a hard time, because that's just who I am, because we like you so much.
Remember, too, Sean, I'm also predicting a shutdown of threats in the United States in front of that. So I think Dorian's the last one for a couple of weeks, but this pattern reminds me sort of last year. Now, that doesn't mean a Michael's going to hit again. It means that guys like me will be tested to see if we can forecast this stuff. But
well, it's not. Listen, it's a science, but it's an art along with science. So, all right, Joe Bastardi, weatherbell.com. Thank you, my friend. So we have this insanity last night, and Bernie Sanders. I mean, what he said about population control is just stunning to me. I'm shocked. So along with the payroll growth for August that they didn't expect because they're talking down the economy, the president now has set a goal. Now, I took a lot of crap. Linda, did I not take a lot of crap? And I didn't fight back because I knew I would be vindicated in the end, like we usually are, vetting Obama. We're right. They're wrong. We were right about the deep state. The evidence is overwhelming, incontrovertible. It all happened. We had it down from the beginning, and we worked hard to dig every day on that story. And now we're within 2 months of really getting validation. How much crap did I take over the fact that I said, no. The president did not give up on the border wall. I took a lot, right?
Yeah, we take a lot on a lot of things.
Yeah. All right. We're right on. Oh, let's see. Ferguson, Freddie Gray, Cambridge Police, UVA.
But you know
Duke
what? That's
Lacrosse,
not the problem right now.
Richard Jewell.
That's not the problem. You know what the problem is right now?
What?
That all these jerks are still walking around talking trash. And until one of these guys goes to prison and is held to the same standard as the rest of us, forget about it. There's nothing.
If that happens, and I can't control, the story we have is locked down. The evidence is overwhelming. First there was a rigged investigation into Hillary. The evidence is overwhelming. Any other American would have been put in jail. Any other American would have been put in jail also for the obstruction aspect, which is the subpoenaed emails. I've told that story a million times. Then we have the premeditated fraud on the FISA court. You have Jim Comey's lies. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of surveillance, unmasking, leaking intelligence. We will see if we have a dual justice system. It's not about the story anymore as much as it's about, will they go after their own? Or does that mean America could shred its Constitution, which is the foundation for every law we have? Well, does that mean that there's a dual justice system, one for Hillary, one for DOJ, one for FBI, and one for the rest of us? Are we going to have equal application of our laws, equal justice under the law? Because if we have that, these people will be charged, they will be convicted, and they will go to jail, just like others have. And, listen, just sit tight. I am telling you, just sit tight. I know I've been saying that for a while. We haven't been wrong yet. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I'll gladly admit it and apologize and correct the record. So far, we've not been wrong. Linda, how many times did we have meetings? How many times did I have meetings over with TV? We can't be wrong. If we're wrong, we're going to get crushed. And
Hundreds.
So double, triple, quadruple check. How many times did we sit on stories that we had, authenticated, but we just wanted a little bit more? In other words, that we met the standard, the quote, journalistic standards of, we had corroboration, but we still wanted a little more. Then we'd delay it a week or two, and then we'd get to it. And there's still even some of those issues that are hanging out there, like, oh, I wonder if Hillary Clinton was treated differently. Pay close attention. I'm giving away something here. I wonder if Hillary's campaign had issues involving Russia, but it was treated differently by the very same people that, let's see, wrote an exoneration before an investigation. Pay close attention. Tick-tock. The president set a deadline for the construction of the border wall. Now, many of you gave me heat because you said, oh, you're not holding him accountable. I said, I don't need to hold him accountable yet. I said, he has made a decision. Why bother? I have the power and the authority legislatively. We've cited the congressional laws specifically that any president has the right to close off any drug corridors into the country. And constitutionally, as the commander in chief, he has the authority to do it. Past presidents have reallocated funds for the purpose of issues like this. Now, talking with the reporters in the Oval Office, the president said his administration is building or replacing very large sections of the wall. And with the $3.6 billion that has now been reallocated on top of the monies that Congress already allocated, he is now saying that 500 miles will take care of all the areas that the administration wanted to protect. And we're going to have close to 500 miles of wall, which will be complete by the end of next year, right after the election, he said. So we'll see. We had 300, 400 heading into the election. That would be another huge promise made and kept. And there'll be another chance for never Trumper people that jumped on the bandwagon late, that act like they always like Trump, and they're doing it for, let's see, business reasons or expediency. Let's see if they now say, oh, I guess Hannity's right. He's a negotiator, and he just decided to change course and pursue a different strategy. I don't know how many of you are paying attention to this Epstein suicide and investigation, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm watching it closely. I'm just doing little reports here and there. But this story seems to have receded maybe in some people's minds, but it's not. We have new revelations about the suicide. All right, that's put aside for a minute, but we have secret court documents that apparently contain a claim by one of Epstein's sex slaves. They could not only put the story right on the front page, it may actually have an impact on the 2020 presidential race. And this one person in particular, she has a very good lawyer. We know David Boies, right? Great guy. Speaking out about her role in this whole thing and being abused as a young child. And anyways, told the court that she was abused by numerous prominent American politicians. We need to identify every one of them, and they need to be held accountable. They really do. I don't have much to say for those of you. I know it's been just blowing up social media. While I was on Hannity last night, we saw it. And Joe Biden having a bursted blood vessel in his eyeball. By the way, I've had that happen. So I don't, and I don't have any health issues at all that I know of. And so it was weird, though. I mean, and then the gaffes were even more weird, but looking at it was a little, it didn't help Joe because he's not looking particularly energetic as we now know. We're going to pay more attention to this on TV tonight. Trump donors, Trump businesses that support their president. Oh, yeah, they're getting a fresh wave of boycotts and public shaming. And it's really, we know what happened to the Stephen Ross, Equinox, Soul Cycle. I don't go to any of these places. I just do it at my house. I have my own dojo. We do mixed martial arts. And I know, Linda, you got a Peloton thing, right?
Every
like
day. That? That's me. Me and
you don't
Peloton.
do it every day. Stop. You don't. Tell the truth. Okay. You do it every day?
I don't do it every day. You're right. I'm so sorry that I said that. I don't know what
you do it a lot, though. All right. Anyway, so they're now going after. We saw it with Deborah Messing. We'll have more on that tonight, too. So much to get to. Now, we have big news on the deep state. Devin Nunes' lawsuit. We have the news from Jay Sekulow and the ACLJ suing the FBI, their FOIA request, Tom Fitton's FOIA request on Hillary's emails. We'll check in with Devin. We'll check in with Greg Jarrett. We'll check in also Kellyanne Conway today, and the battle with China. Well, China is now losing because they have the slowest moving economy in 27 years, and their currency is now at an 11-year low. All right, when we come back, Congressman Devin Nunes, his lawsuit against Fusion GPS, Kellyanne Conway, Greg Jarrett, a lot of deep state news next.
Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin yang, come along.
I want to be clear. I'm not going nuts. I'm not sure whether it was a medical school or where the hell I spoke, but it was on the campus.
Americans who own AR-15s, AK-47s, will have to sell them to the government.
I think young people are more informed and dynamic than their predecessors. I think that they are more sensitive in a positive way.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America.
And you're on page 103? 103, that's correct, volume 2. When you talk about the firm that produced the Steele reporting, the name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that.
Let me just help you. It was. It's not a trick question. It was Fusion GPS. Now, Fusion GPS produced the opposition research document widely known as the Steele dossier, and the owner of Fusion GPA was someone named Glenn Simpson. Are you familiar with?
This is outside my purview.
2014. Are you aware of that?
Outside my purview.
All right, there was spectacular, unbelievable moments when Robert Mueller finally testified before Congress. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. We have a lot. This news is huge. Now, Devin Nunes, the former House Intel Committee chairman, now the ranking member, filed a lawsuit against Fusion GPS. How is it possible the special counsel never knew? How is that? It's unbelievable to me. You know, he didn't remember what Fusion GPS is, like he never knew the Jeannie Ray, one of the lead investigators right up there with the corrupt Andrew Weissman himself. That Jeannie Ray worked for the Clinton Foundation as her lawyer. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay. Everyone else in the free world that has been following this story knows that Fusion GPS, that was the firm that was paid for by a law firm called Perkins Coie with money that was funneled by the Clinton campaign. And then Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele, who created the dirty Russian dossier that all turns out to be false. That, of course, was used to bludgeon Trump and spy on Carter Page and backdoor into the whole Trump campaign transition and then presidency. And according to all of this, you know, and remember, it was used as the bulk of information, to quote the Grassley-Graham memo, for the FISA applications, all four of them, three of which were signed by Jim Comey. And according to this lawsuit of Devin Nunes, Fusion GPS tried to impede, derail his investigation into the dirty dossier. And Congressman Nunes joins us now. Congressman, thank you for being with us. We appreciate your time. It's a nearly $10 million suit, $9.9 million suit. Tell us the nature of this.
Well, Sean, I think you and everyone else knows that followed this closely. You knew what Fusion GPS was doing to me and to others. And this is part of the cleanup. And people get frustrated that nothing's happened yet. But remember, you had the entire intelligence apparatus taken over by the Obama and Clinton regime, and this stuff is not easy to fix. So and part of what we have to do, and on your show last night, you had on Jay Sekulow, you talked about what Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch is doing. People who are able to get the third branch of government, the judicial branch of government, have to stand up and do it, because you have to fight a war on all fronts. That's one of the problems that I think we've had in the Republican Party and the conservative movement is, you know, you just expect like one person to be able to shoot, fire, aim, and be done with the war. But the left in this country is more energized than ever before. They control so much of our economy, whether it's the universities, the school system. They've done a lot to invest into district attorneys and throughout the United States. They own most of, if not almost all, the media. So they own the tech oligarchs own all the platforms. I can go on and on. And so, you know, just expecting, you know, of Devin Nunes or Lindsey Graham or Chuck Grassley, you know, just to work through the legislative branch of government when we don't even control the House anymore, it's not. You're just fighting with both hands behind your back. So, you know darn well what Fusion GPS was doing. They fought to stop us from getting a hold of their bank records, which, you know, then led us directly to the Clinton campaign. The Clinton campaign was behind the Steele dossier. And these guys have a long history of smearing people for a living. It's what they do. And so what we're now doing is we're going through and we're cleaning up. It's not okay to obstruct justice. It's not okay to file phony charges against a congressman, and that was, in my case, it was me, no less the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, who's running an investigation into you.
Well, didn't that also cost you money? I mean, now financially, when they do that, that prevents you from doing your job. That helps derail your investigation. Now you have to defend yourself against these reckless charges, but these charges are basically designed to keep you busy and stop you from doing your work. Isn't that your point?
That's exactly right. So this is under the RICO statute. So remember, the RICO laws were passed because of the mafia. And really, if you think about it, Fusion GPS is no different. I mean, they are a racketeering outfit. They do a lot of bad things. They work with others, and so we're suing them and one of these AstroTurf groups that, in the name of good government, it's called Campaign for Accountability. Sounds really nice, except it's made of a bunch of former Clinton and Obama people. They bring in dark money, and then they work with people like Fusion GPS. So in this case, Campaign for Accountability paid $140,000 in 2018 to Fusion GPS. And then just so happens that Campaign for Accountability files 3 ethics complaints against me. And so, like you said, I have legal bills. I had to pay legal bills. I had to fight all of these. I'm still fighting them, by the way. I mean, it never stops. And so the only way to fight these guys is you got to stand up. You have to go to the judicial branch of government. We have laws in place, and hopefully the Eastern District of Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., hopefully we will get a good judge that wants to do justice, because we're not going to clean. Everybody complains about how dirty politics is today, and it is way dirtier than I've ever seen in my whole career. I've never experienced anything like this. Granted, I've been in the middle of the hurricane, but this is not the way the United States, the leader of the free world, this is not the way our government is supposed to function. And when you have racketeering outfits like Fusion GPS out there smearing people, whether it's the Trump campaign, Bill Browder, working with shady Venezuelan oil companies, or taking on congressmen who are investigating them, it's not acceptable, and it needs to be stopped. The laws are in place, and the courts can do it. And that's what I'm aiming to do. I'm aiming to, they need to be shut down. Just like the mafia was shut down, Fusion GPS needs to be shut down. And so
let me ask you this.
Dark money groups.
What does it mean to you when you heard that testimony of Bob Mueller? He doesn't know what Fusion GPS is. How does he not know Jeannie Ray is on his staff? That is a spectacular fail to me. Just like we did have Russian interference. The New York Times now even finally, they're a little late, but they recognize that the dossier was likely Russian disinformation from the beginning, meaning that the Russians knew that Hillary was paying for it, and the Russians knew that she'd use it for the campaign, which kind of convinces me in a lot of ways that it was more likely that they wanted her to win, considering they knew how damaging that dirty dossier would be, full of misinformation or disinformation.
Well, look, there's no question that this whole idea. Let's just start with this: the idea that it's new that the Russians or the Soviets before them were not involved in our elections, like this was just something new. The only reason that this is now being talked about is because Hillary Clinton lost. They wanted to use it to dirty up Trump during the 2016 election. It failed. It was a joke. You remember, Hillary Clinton's campaign was mimicking or echoing the Steele dossier starting in May, June, July, August of 2000, all the way through 2016. You had leaks of investigations, remember? And I was overseeing this, and at the time I'm like, I just thought it was fake news. I mean, I just didn't believe that our counterintelligence capabilities would be investigating a campaign. So when those stories leaked out in October, it was clearly designed to derail the Trump campaign. But just to close up with this, Sean, the Soviets did this all through the Cold War. Putin never stopped. It happens all the time. Other countries do this to us. And so this was the most successful operation the Russians or the Soviet Union ever ran, mainly because of the media working with their allies, the Democratic Party.
It's sad all of this has happened. What did you make of the ACLJ's lawsuit by Jay Sekulow against the FBI over, a FOIA request and a suit regarding Comey's spies in the White House? They're giving specific names, and they were reporting back to Comey. Now, remember, I think it's important to remind our audience, it gets complicated at different times, that Comey told Trump in January at Trump Tower, before he was sworn in as president, he said to him, yeah, we have this dossier. It's salacious, but it's unverified. But he signed off on the first FISA application and then subsequently 2 renewal applications that he claims that it was verified because that was the bulk of information. So Comey is a liar. There's no other way to put it. He's lied. He's lied repeatedly. But what did you think about the idea? And he says he doesn't spy. Well, the FOIA, the FISA that he signed off on was to spy. just like having two people in Trump's White House to spy on the president. What does that say to you, and what does that mean to you?
So remember, this is why what I started with is we have to bring lawsuits and get the third branch of government, the judicial branch of government, involved at every step. So wherever we see wrongdoing, we have to target it. So there's plenty of what I would call circumstantial evidence out there that people were placed within the White House. Okay, there's plenty of examples of that, which we don't need to get into now. But you just have to go back and remember that this was, when you look at what they did with the dossier, this is why they tried so hard to cover it up. This is why they tried to stop what we did on the House Intelligence Committee, the Republicans. This is why these ethics charges were filed. And don't forget, Comey's little friends that are out there in the little blogosphere, they were echoing what Fusion GPS was saying about me and my colleagues, okay? So they planted the stories, they planted the fake, phony ethics complaints, and then they would magnify them. Why did they do that? See, they wanted to run a counterintelligence investigation because they figured that there was the only people that could get to it would be the House or Senate Intelligence Committee, and they figured we would never be able to get to it because it would be too hard. And as you remember, that's why we had to fight to get the bank records. That's why we had to fight to get the FISA documents released. That's why we had to use a rule that had not been used, had been put in place in the 1970s when the intelligence committees were created after Watergate. That's what we used to put out what was now the infamous Nunes memo. That was because for a year we had to sit on the fact that we knew they had used that dirty dossier.
And you couldn't tell me. Listen, I used to ask you, you wouldn't tell me. And to your credit, you followed the rules, and you're not allowed to. But I would ask you questions like, am I over the target, Congressman? And you say, yeah, you usually, you never said to me I wasn't. Stay right there. Devin Nunes filing a racketeering lawsuit against Fusion GPS.
Stay in touch with the Hannity faithful. Join the message board at Hannity.com.
Nothing is more important than defeating the opioid and addiction crisis. My administration is determined to use every resource at our disposal to smash the grip of addiction. In October 2017, my administration declared a nationwide public health emergency, directing agencies to use every resource in their arsenal to overcome the deadly plague of opioid abuse.
All right, that's the president talking about opioids. Let me tell you something. This drives me insane because this is so important for this country. And the president committing $1.8 billion to fight this crisis. That was another campaign promise that he made in New Hampshire and other places. And I got to tell you that we're losing nearly 300 Americans a week. This is not a joke. And I understand the lawsuits. And if we don't stop it, considering 90% of the heroin crosses that border. And I know the attorneys generals, they're more interested not in the cartels because they can't get any money out of them. So they'll go after the manufacturers of some of these harder drugs like OxyContin and so on and so forth. But I will tell you what happens is people usually start with the Vicodin, the Percocet, the Oxy, and then all of a sudden they're $80 a pill on the street. They can't afford it, but they can get a $10 bag of crappy heroin that you have no idea what it is laced with or who made it. And then they quickly become addicts there. And then every time they shoot up, it's, are you going to live or die? You don't know. If we control the borders, that's where 90% of the heroin crosses into this country from. And the same now with fentanyl, where you have a few grains of salt will kill, or the size of a few grains of salt of fentanyl. Yeah, that'll kill a 250-pound man, almost guaranteed. Anyway, Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president, is with us on this and other topics. That's a lot of money. I know this has been for you a personal issue that you are very passionate about. I know that you went to the president directly and said, I want to work on this. This is big progress and a big day, in my opinion.
Sean, it is, and thanks so much for replaying the president's remarks from yesterday. The $1.8 billion awarded just yesterday in the state opioid response grants goes to every single state and D.C. and the territories. Why? Because every single state, D.C. and the territories, have been affected by what we call the crisis next door. No state has been spared, no demographic group untouched. Instead of talking about the problems and only hearing harrowing story of loss after harrowing story of loss, we're solving these problems. This battleship's starting to go in the right direction. Do you know under the president's leadership, Sean, there is a decrease in the number of youth who have started using heroin or opioids. There's an increase in the number of Americans who are in treatment. Our DHS and CPB that gets attacked by the left routinely, just last year, they seized enough fentanyl to have killed every American 4 times. So this is law enforcement, interdiction, treatment and recovery, prevention, education. Last important point. Under this president's leadership, we've had the steepest decline in overdose death rates since 1990. 30 years, we haven't had a 5% decline like we've seen. And in key states, that decline is even greater. In the state of New Hampshire, hard-hit state, 11% decline in overdose deaths. Ohio, 24%. Pennsylvania, 24%. Kentucky, 17%. And on and on. So it shows when you don't ignore the problem, like it was ignored last administration, and you tackle it head on, you invest the resources, you tell people addiction is a disease, not a moral failing, you break through that silence and stigma, you get people the treatment they need, and you educate people. People don't know that when you go in for a root canal or a collegiate or high school athlete's injury, Sean, you don't need that big bottle of 30 pills with another refill. You may need 1 or 2 at the very beginning. You may need just an over-the-counter remedy. You have the right to say no to your own prescription. You have the right to just manage your own pain. But when you're done with that prescription, get rid of it. Bring it back. You can send it back free of charge through the mail to the National Transportation. I can get you you guys can put out the address. But more importantly, bring it back to the pharmacy. Bring it to the local police station. Don't keep it lying around in a medicine cabinet and gym bag and grandma's top drawer, junk drawer, so that it gets into the wrong hands. I also want to use the word fentanyl. This president and this first lady work on this public policy issue of combating the drug supply, drug demand in our nation together. And the president and the first lady, Melania Trump, have done an amazing job raising awareness, raising funds, and getting results. But they've also injected into our everyday lexicon the word fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It is being manufactured mainly in labs in China, and it is just being peddled. The poison's coming over the southern border. It's coming through our seaports. It was coming through our mail. The president signed into law last year the STOP Act. That means that every foreign origin package now can be opened. So these Chinese packages that are coming in, tiny little grains of fentanyl in an otherwise legitimate shipment, that's being increasingly interdicted. It means that we're literally, Sean, keeping the poison out of our communities and out of our kids.
Well, if we don't stop it, at some point we got to recognize this. We can't lose 300 Americans every week from this, and it's that bad. And I applaud you.
Now, it's actually like a plane. Look, Sean, it's like a plane falling from the sky every single day. Let me do it graphically for you. 70,000 Americans last year. So we're closer to about 1,500 a week now. Those numbers have just mushroomed, and recently they've mushroomed. Now, as I said, we've got this decline in overdose deaths, decline in new starts, decline in the number of prescriptions, too, because what's happening is you have these states now working together to say, hey, let's start with 5 pills or 7 pills, but not 30, so that's helping. But what you say is important because when you just think about the casualties alone, if, God forbid, a plane was falling from the sky every day filled with people, we would all stop whatever we're talking about, Sean, and we talk about why are the planes falling from the sky with all these people. Hey, folks, the drug epidemic in our country is the equivalent of that. And it's all around us. You know, see something, say something. If you see something, say something. Somebody needs help. They need somebody to recognize what's going on.
Kellyanne, here's the problem. We've now sent our cameras to Nancy Pelosi's district 2 or 3 times. I don't remember at this point.
Great work.
I think twice. A mile from her gated community, walled-off house, she has there people literally shooting up all day, every day in the streets. They're dropping their needles everywhere to just dump them. People that don't have a place to urinate or defecate. They got a feces problem in her district. 1 mile in the other direction is her office. And how she has not gone to every millionaire friend of hers and said, I'm giving $1 million. Will you give $1 million? Can we build a place here where maybe we can give people bathrooms, a shower, a warm meal once or twice a day, and maybe we'll even get a couple of drug counselors in here to maybe help some of these people out. Not that hard, is it?
That's right. No, it's not that hard. In fact, it's being done by this administration, but we get resistance from some cities. And like I said, this $2 billion in grants yesterday, that goes right to the states and the locals. That's federal money, but they use it. They've got flexibility. So what you just described could be helped. Now, to get a nice pot of money here, Sean, just yesterday, on top of all the billions we've already raised for opioids and drugs. But you know what Pelosi can also do? All these governors and mayors and members of Congress on the Democratic side who are looking the other way at people who are suffering thusly, she can get together with local employers and say, hey, when this person's lucky enough to come out of drug treatment or off of the streets or out of the drug treatment program, we want to make sure they don't return to the drugs. So they need skills, they need employability, they need a job, they need housing. And this Trump economy has created so many excess jobs. You have 7.5 million available jobs, more than the number of people who are looking for jobs. So we've been working here in the White House, Sean, on bringing in Department of Labor and housing and education, et cetera, to treat the whole person. But we need the help of people like that. Look what they did in San Francisco yesterday. Instead of helping and giving some dignity and some physical help to these people in San Francisco, they went and passed a resolution designating the NRA as a domestic terror organization. Give me a break. This is how you're spending your time. When Pelosi was here before their long, lavish vacation this summer, what did they do? They're voting on resolutions about the president's tweets. I mean, instead of helping humankind, but America sees it. They know who's helping. This will be a legacy issue for this president. He heard it on the campaign trail. He saw people suffering, and he is delivering.
Let me switch gears here. We had all this, I guess, climate change insanity. We have this new Green Deal that wants to eliminate oil and gas. And so my question to you is, well, let me play a little bit of the comments. We're not going to talk about any specific candidates, but just generally speaking, for the first time in 75 years, we're energy independent because of the president's policies. That is huge for us. It's huge strategically when you look at, the benefits to the American people, the career jobs, high paying jobs, trained to be a driver for $80,000 a year. And literally, we don't have to beg countries that hate our guts for the lifeblood of our economy. So but they want to get rid of oil and gas in 10 years. Here's some of the insanity of what was said last night by these so-called candidates on the Democratic side.
There are a lot of ways that we try to change our energy consumption and our pollution. And God bless all of those ways. Some of it is with light bulbs. Some of it is on straws. Some of it, is on cheeseburgers, right? There are a lot of different pieces to this. And I get that people are trying to find the part that they can work on and what can they do. And I'm in favor of that. And I'm going to help and I'm going to support. But understand, this is exactly what the fossil fuel industry hopes we're all talking about.
But would you support changing the dietary guidelines? Yes. The food pyramid. What people to reduce red meat specifically.
Yes, I would.
We can have a more balanced diet and therefore a more balanced footprint and not propose that they abolish the cow.
Consumption, beef in particular, is a major driver of climate change. Should Americans change their eating habits and eat less beef?
The UN just released a study that said we're going to be okay if the vast majority of the world goes vegetarian immediately. You guys see that? So it's good for the environment. It's good for your health if you eat less meat. Certainly meat is an extraordinarily expensive thing to produce from an environmental sustainability point of view. So I think it would be healthy on both an individual and a societal level for us to move in that direction.
I don't even know where to begin. And
sorry, it's central.
I honestly, I don't know what we're going to do.
You know what, Sean? You should take the next couple of days off and just play a whole loop of them talking. It was like a free commercial for the Trump reelect. But in a serious matter, let's review very quickly here. Okay, the price tag for the Green New Deal is $32 trillion. A lot of these Democrats running for president, and even though
it's up to $94 trillion, depending. All right, stay right there. I don't mean to interrupt you. Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. I've met my friends at Hustler Turf. These guys are amazing. This is a family-owned, operated shop. This has now gone on in America, American jobs for 3 generations. Now, our friends at Hustler Turf, by the way, hustlerturf.com, that's their website. Now, they built this business in 1964, their very first zero-turn lawnmower, and they now have been the leader in the lawn equipment industry ever since. Every single Hustler product is engineered, designed, and assembled right here in the USA. That's U.S. jobs right here in the heartland. These are great family, great people, hardworking, high quality, reliable mowers. You know, one of their biggest problems is they make their mowers so well, you don't need to replace them. You know, with other ones, they break down, you have trouble, you got to get a new one. No, that's not how it works with Hustler. Just go to hustler.com today to learn more, find the nearest retailer. Now, if you haven't driven one, you feel their super smooth steering, superior comfort, control. Doesn't matter if you're mowing a football field, you have a big backyard, they've got you covered. And it doesn't matter if you're a professional or a homeowner. They got the right gear for you. Visit my friends, hustlerturf.com today. Great people, great family, great product, great value. That's hustlerturf.com. Go there today. Find the retailer near you.
Up next, our final roundup and information overload hour.
Get the most superior lubricants on the market today. Visit RoyalOilUS.com.
All right, as we continue, Kellyanne Conway is with us, counselor to the president. And we just played for taxpayers got to pay more in taxes. We got to eliminate plastic straws. We need to all become vegetarians. We need, to shut down 27% of American electricity generated by coal. Who's going to pay for all this? Let's have a new carbon tax. Let's take advantage of, and to reduce the amount of red meat people eat. We're going to have a cow tax, I guess, at some point. No federal assistance for people who want to rebuild their homes in disaster-prone areas. Okay. And, there was nothing more challenging than winning World War II. That's what they said last night. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
That was a disgrace for Mayor Buttigieg to say that this is harder than the hardest thing we've done since winning World War II. I hope people focus on that. Sean, in many ways, the contrast couldn't be brighter. They're making it so easy for this president's successes and the contrast to be made clear. This is a president who has made us energy independent. The United States of America under President Trump are now the net exporter of natural gas and oil. Why? Because of his energy policies, because of his deregulation, because of his tax cuts, because of his boldness. And yet you contrast that to people whose message to America last night is, we're going to tell you what to eat, what not to eat. They want to ban not just cows and not just gas, but gas from cows. And people turn on the TV and they say, so your solution is fewer cheeseburgers, and in the case of Bernie Sanders, fewer children. He was advocating for more abortions in the developed world for, quote, those women who don't want large families. This is your modern Democratic Party. But let's call them out for the hypocrites they are. They all flew there. I don't think anybody walked there or rode their bike there, as far as I know. That's number two. Most importantly, listen to what they all said about the Green New Deal before they voted on it. Senator Kamala Harris, of course we can afford it. Senator Elizabeth Warren, in all the way for a Green New Deal. Gillibrand, who since had to drop out of the race. We need to pass a Green New Deal. Quote, this should be our nation's
We're almost done, but I got to tell you, I agree.
They voted on it, and nobody voted for it. It got 0 votes in the United States Senate. They're full of it. And let me point out one last thing nobody has said. Tom Steyer is trying to buy his way onto the debate stage and failed. He shot onto the national scene politically on climate change and environment years ago. He can't even make the debate stage for climate change. Number two, Governor Jay Inslee of Washington State had a bow out of the race already, and he was running on, drumroll please, climate change. So this is just foolish. If they really cared about things that are going to help America, they would have been up there doing what the president was doing yesterday, which is talking about trade with China, the opioid crisis, the booming economy. The Trump economy, we're in the longest sustained recovery and expansion.
All right, Kellyanne, I'm out of time. I got to run. We wish we had more time for you. We love you. Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. Great job on opioids. Great job analyzing this insanity. All right, quick break. We'll come back. Wow, huge developments on the deep state, the lawsuit by the ACLJ, that's Jay Sekulow, and Devin Nunes, what he just said in the last half hour, and much more straight ahead.
I want to be clear. I'm not going nuts. I'm not sure whether it was a medical school or where the hell I spoke, but it was on the campus.
Americans who own AR-15s, AK-47s, will have to sell them to the government.
I think young people are more informed and dynamic than their predecessors. I think that they are more sensitive in a positive way.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America. Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
The way we operate in the Department of Justice, if we're going to accuse somebody of wrongdoing, we have to have admissible evidence and credible witnesses. We need to prepare to prove our case in court. And we have to affix our signature to the charging document. That's something that not everybody appreciates. There's a lot of talk about FISA applications. And many people that I see talking about it seem not to recognize what a FISA application. A FISA application is actually a warrant, just like a search warrant. In order to get a FISA search warrant, you need an affidavit signed by a career federal law enforcement officer who swears that the information in the affidavit is true and correct to the best of his knowledge and belief. And that's the way we operate. And if it's wrong, sometimes it is, if you find out there's anything incorrect in there, that person is going to face consequences.
All right, news roundup, information overload hour. That Rod Rosenstein, he said this in was it May 2018 now? I'm pretty sure. Now think about what he's saying there. He signed the third FISA renewal, the fourth and final FISA warrant against Carter Page that, of course, gave the back door to spy on, well, candidate Trump, transition team Trump, and Trump being the president, President Trump. And at that point, I believe that the FBI, John Solomon's reporting has been very clear on this. They finally put together a spreadsheet, and lo and behold, the bulk of information, according to the Grassley-Graham memo, which was the Steele dossier, the Russian lies Hillary Clinton paid for, was in fact lies. And as I said to Devin Nunes earlier in the program, it was likely Russian disinformation from the beginning. That would mean that Russia knew what Steele was going to do with the dossier. They fed him all these lies, knowing that it would go to Hillary Clinton, knowing it would get out in the press, knowing that it would impact the 2016 elections in her favor. Now, the narrative from the media mob has always been, oh, no, the Russians were trying to elect Trump. I don't think so, because I think they always saw Hillary Clinton as weak. I think that's pretty transparent. Anyway, Greg Jarrett is with us. There's a great piece out on this very, very thing. But the guy I think that's in the most trouble. Now, I would hope and I pray if there is equal application of our laws and equal justice under the law, it should be that the evidence is overwhelming. It is incontrovertible. We have it all. That, in fact, there was a premeditated fraud committed on the FISA court. McCabe, the deputy FBI director at the time, said no FISA without the dossier. They never verified the dossier. They swore before the FISA court that it was true to the best of their ability, but they were warned otherwise. That's where the premeditation comes in. I can't imagine any scenario where there's premeditated fraud on a court to deny the civil rights of one American and use that information to hurt a presidential candidate, transition team, and then presidency is not a big deal that will result in charges. Greg Jarrett, you comment on this very thing.
Well, Comey vouched for the veracity of his representations to the FISA court. It was all based on the dossier. He said it was authentic. The document cited the credibility of his sources. All of that was untrue. And Comey swore under penalty of perjury that it was true and correct, that he was adhering to the FISA law and FBI regulations. Yet when he sought the warrant, he still hadn't confirmed any of the allegations of collusion in the Steele dossier. And, you know, Sean, as you well know, confirmation or corroboration is required before you seek a warrant, not after it. And the FBI and Comey didn't do that. Let me just read you out of the FBI guidelines, the relevant passage. This is also under the FISA rules and regulations. Quote, the accuracy of information contained within FISA applications is of the utmost importance. Only documented and verified information may be used to support FBI applications to the court.
But Greg, if I may interject before, it's unverifiable. That we discovered it's not even verifiable. There was never a shot at verifying it.
That's right, and that's according to the author of the dossier in court documents. Christopher Steele said that, what I have in this document, 17 memos, is unverifiable. It was all based on multiple hearsay, anonymous sources. You can't verify that. Comey didn't care. And so, Sean, I think his gloating last week over the first part of the Inspector General's report was premature. I think he has to wait, and we have to wait for the IG's forthcoming report on FISA abuse. And if it reflects any of the dishonest acts that I think the evidence clearly demonstrates, then Comey is in trouble legally. And he may be held accountable in our system of justice. Maybe he beat the rap last week, but there's a lot more coming.
All right, so if it's premeditated fraud, we know Kathleen Kavlik at the State Department about 2 weeks prior to Comey originally signing off on the first FISA application, then Bruce Orr's admonition in August of 2016, his admonition, everybody was saying it's not verified. Everybody told the DOJ, Comey, FBI, everybody involved knew that it was paid for by Hillary Clinton. They minimized that in the application. They say, okay, nothing's verified, and that Steele had an agenda. And Steele was being paid. Now we know he's being paid by a lot of people. The second part of what Rod Rosenstein says there is, if you find out it's not true, you need to fix it. Now, what's interesting about that is, why didn't Rod Rosenstein by that point know that the bulk of information in the FISA applications was not verifiable? He now has entangled himself in this mess.
He has, and I suspect he will, in the end, if he hasn't already, under questioning, said, I relied on others. I didn't actually read the document that I signed. He gave a hint of that in congressional testimony to Louis Gohmert, who pressed him about, the veracity of the document and his signature on it. And, Rosenstein, as he's wont to do, sort of hemmed and hawed and hedged and was very evasive. But if you read the entirety of his testimony, it sounds like he's saying, even though I told that crowd, and you just played the clip, that how important it is to do your due diligence on this, it sounds like Rosenstein didn't. That's his only way out of legal jeopardy. And Comey will do the same thing. He will feign ignorance and claim amnesia, which is what he always does.
All right, but let's walk through the court case here. You put Bruce Orr on the record, and he sits, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? And he says, yeah. Did you warn James Comey that the dossier was unverified? Yes. Did you warn James Comey that Hillary Clinton paid for it? Yes. Did you warn James Comey that Christopher Steele Yes. Did you warn them that the dossier was likely unverified? Yes. Did you? So how many times do you get warned and then you get to say, I didn't know, or plead ignorance, when in fact this was very easily discoverable? Why didn't they sit down their beloved Christopher Steele and say, Chris Steele, tell us, how do you know the stories about hookers urinating in the Ritz-Carlton bed of Donald Trump took place? And why didn't they maybe make a call to the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow and find out if Donald Trump even stayed there at that time, which apparently he didn't?
Well, you should have been a lawyer because you made a very cogent and effective case. the FBI.
If I was a lawyer, I'd be one of you guys. That's the last thing I want. You know what? You know what they call a lawyer at the bottom of the ocean. You do know that, right?
Yeah, a good start.
I'm kidding. I love lawyers. But go ahead.
But look, the FBI was warned by Cadillac. They were warned by Chris Steele. They were warned by Bruce Orr, and you've just laid it all out quite nicely. And Comey's only out, this is what he always does, is, oh, gosh, Kathleen Cadillac, never heard of her. Bruce Orr, never talked to him. Christopher Steele, who's that? So Comey's
What did you do to verify the contents in the dossier that you swore to in court?
He'll say he relied on others. That's what Comey always claims. But that's not good enough in a court of law. When you affix your signature, you're taking responsibility for the document and the authenticity and veracity of it. And you have to do your own due diligence. You can't just rely on others. So in the end, that may not be a sufficient legal defense for James Comey if he faces an indictment.
What did you think about Jay Sekulow? This blew me away last night, and I think this is huge, that they have filed a lawsuit against the FBI. And by the way, where is Christopher Wray cleaning up the premier law enforcement agency in the entire world? Where is his interest in cleaning up this mess, this distrust now that exists because of the likes of Comey and McCabe and Strzok and Page? But anyway, that Director Comey had planted spies inside the White House, and they sent the Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI and other offices at the DOJ so they could determine what Comey and his little circle of corruption had done in their efforts to spy on the Trump administration. The deadline passes, so they filed the lawsuit, and they're asking very specific questions about very specific individuals, and that Director Comey, apparently, they believe, conducted his own covert operation against President Trump by putting agents and spies. Now, we know he bragged about doing it to General Flynn, something he said he'd never do in the Bush or Obama administrations. And we know McCabe said to Flynn, no, you don't need your lawyer, denying him of his Miranda rights and constitutional rights, which I think should be thrown out on right there. It's anything on, it's over. But if that's true, on top of the spying that went on abroad, or maybe subcontracted out spying to circumvent American laws, we really have beyond an attempted coup here, don't we?
Oh, we absolutely do. And hats off to Judicial Watch and Jay Sekulow's organization for filing these FOIA demands and lawsuits. And I blame people like Christopher Wray, the current FBI director, who ought to be sacked because he has done nothing to improve the good name and reputation of the hardworking FBI agents. Instead, he has sought to protect the institution by covering up evidence of wrongdoing. He defies lawful subpoenas issued by Congress. He turns down all FOIA requests. He retroactively classifies non-classified information in order to hide and conceal the truth. This is a man who is the equal of James Comey when it comes to corruption and malevolence, and it's time that Christopher Wray say goodbye to the FBI building and leave. And if he doesn't, frankly, he ought to be fired.
Quick break. We'll come back. We'll continue more with Greg Jarrett. His brand new book is coming out. You might want to order early on Amazon.com. We put it up on Hannity.com. It's called Witch Hunt, the story of the greatest mass delusion in American political history. More on the other side of that. And, wait till you hear. This battle over China has gotten a lot of interest. We'll get into that. All right, as we continue, this is now getting interesting, all of this. So we're going to get the Inspector General report on FISA abuse. John Solomon saying, well, where's the grand jury? Would that be something that would have been set up ahead of time? Is it going on? Sometimes you don't know that grand juries have been seated and they're secretive, et cetera, et cetera. Is that something that could be happening that we don't know is happening? Or is it more likely that after the report is revealed to the public and that the inspector general goes before Senator Graham's committee and gets all the time he needs to tell his story, that we begin to see indictments of people?
Yes, it could happen and may have happened already. But we just don't know because grand juries operate in secret for a fixed period of time. Prosecutors tend to want to wait until they have all of their evidence firmly collected before they seat a grand jury, so that if it takes a long time, the term of the grand jury doesn't expire. So we just don't know. But if John Durham has the Inspector General's report already, that means he is probably putting together not just his evidence, but Durham's own evidence and his investigators, which likely includes a lengthy interview with Christopher Steele, but Bruce Orr, Kathleen Kavalek, and a great many others. Once that happens, they have to seat a grand jury in order to indict because that's federal law. You can't indict without a grand jury.
I got to run, but thank you so much. Unbelievable. It's just now, we're now weeks away. All right, 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. We'll take a quick break. The battle against China seems to be blinking. How important is that to these ever so fragile stock market people that work in this country? I've never liked the Wall Street groups of people. And I'm speaking generally. There are nice people that work on Wall Street. I just don't trust it. My own advice. Quick break. Right back. We'll get to that. Your calls next half hour. Straight ahead.
Breaking news straight from the source. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
China's been hurting our country for 30 years with the money they've been taking out. Other presidents should have done something about it, and they should have done it a long time ago, whether it was Clinton or Bush or Obama, any of them. They should have done something about it, and they didn't. I'm doing it, and I have no choice because we're not going to lose close to $1 trillion a year to China. And China understands that. I hope that with President Xi, I have a good relationship, but they understand we're not going to do it. And this is more important than anything else right now, just about that we're working on. We have to make sure that our taxpayer, look, we have helped rebuild China like nobody else. And they've done a great job. And I don't blame China. I blame our presidents, our representatives, past administrations for allowing that to happen. It's a disgrace.
You know, the president, when you look at the numbers, as I have been going through regularly on this program, they shock the conscience. And the president, by the way, now that a poll's come out, farmers are warriors, the president said, in this battle, this trade war with the Chinese. And I got to tell you, when you look at the numbers, they're staggering. You got, everywhere from $344.8 billion trade deficit as it relates to U.S. trade in goods with China from 2014 all the way up to 2018. It just went up to $419.5 billion, nearly $500 billion. Now, there is a poll that has come out, a Harvard-Harris poll. More than 2/3 of American voters say it is necessary for the president to fight China on trade. That has for years, resulted in layoffs for U.S. workers. Is there a temporary hit to the economy? I would actually say there probably is. But at what point do we not wake up and say, okay, you're not going to take advantage of us anymore? As of now, if you look at, Ron Johnson even admitted that something he didn't anticipate. And that is, quote, I've been really surprised how patient the people are with the president's war on China and their unfair trade practices. People are really getting harmed by retaliation, loss of markets, losing money, delaying capital expenditures. But almost invariably at the tail end, they go, but I really support what the president's trying to do. Because instinctively, people understand that we're victims in all of this and that China has gotten away with these deals that are one-sided on their side constantly. And at some point, we got to ask ourselves a question. When are we going to stop allowing that to continue? Because that's hurting, in the end, our opportunity to get our goods, our farm products into the Chinese market, because they're taxing everything that we send over there, but we're not doing it to them. That's why there's the $500 billion deficit. Anyway, our good friend is back. Bill Gertz is with us. He's an investigative journalist, author of Deceiving the Sky, Inside Communist China's Drive for Global Supremacy. This is part of it, but he also talks a lot about how the Chinese military, their buildup is designed specifically to cripple American military capabilities and dominate the Asia Pacific. Newt has been talking about their move towards 5G now for a long time, how literally the intellectual property theft is at such an advanced level by the Chinese, how the Obama administration rejected an application for asylum from a high-level would-be Chinese defector. They didn't want to anger Beijing, and much, much more. Bill Gertz, welcome back to the program. Let's start with the trade deficit and how this impacts Americans, because this is real.
Yeah, hi, Sean. Thanks for having me on. We hear a lot from of the Democratic presidential candidates about the existential threat of climate change, and this is the real existential threat to America. It's the communist Chinese, and I've outlined this threat in this new book, Deceiving the Sky, which is drawn from a Chinese strategy, and it points to a comprehensive attack on America and the West, basically. And it's not simply that China is rising. It's that China is rising and it's forcing and attacking the United States through these unfair economic and trade practices, which Trump has made front and center of his China policy, but also these national security threats, that is space weaponry, cyber attacks, intelligence operations. And I've outlined all of that in this book, Deceiving the Sky. This is the most important book that people can read to understand the China threat.
Let me go over some numbers, and then we'll get to the military issue. For example, if you look at steel, aluminum products, we pay $40 million if we want to get our products into China. They pay nothing, pretty much. Or if you look at the imbalance on motorcycles and railway cars, beef, poultry, fiber optic cables, and so on and so forth, aircraft parts, semiconductors, you name it. If you look at fabric, modems, chemicals, furniture, seafood, cosmetics, vodka, it goes on. And smartphones, laptops, kids' toys, all of this, we pay, they don't. Now, I'm a free trader guy, but I'm a free fair trade guy. The president has proved successful with Japan, with Mexico, with Canada, and negotiating new deals with NATO in terms of NATO allies paying their fair share. I think if the president has to do this to convince them, okay, we mean it, and as a result, we now see China's economy growing at its slowest rate in 27 years. And their currency now is at the lowest level in 11 years. So they're feeling the heat from this battle, correct?
Absolutely. The president has done something that no other president has done, and that is he has made American national security intricately linked to economic security. This is the first time that's done. So he's made that the main issue. And as a result of that, of course, the biggest threat to our economy right now is China, and through these tariffs, he's basically laid out that path. The Chinese are responding. I spoke with a senior White House official recently who told me that they're going after the farm states. They're trying to undermine Trump's reelection in 2020. As you mentioned, all of those other areas, for example, whiskey, they're attacking our whiskey industry in order to try and put pressure on the president to cave in. We almost had a trade deal with the Chinese. It was 150 pages. It minutely scrutinized every I that was dotted and T that was crossed was agreed, and then at the last minute the Chinese pulled out of it. And the reason they pulled out of it was because it would be a full admission that they have been conducting cyber attacks, intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, and all of these things that Trump is trying to correct.
Well, I mean, you look at it and it is what it is. Let's talk about the Chinese military buildup and your belief, and I think Newt Gingrich has really been sounding the alarm on this as well, that this military buildup is designed specifically to cripple our military capabilities. They want to dominate not only the Asian Pacific, but they're preparing for showdowns with the U.S. in space as well as the digital realm. And I don't think we're taking it quite seriously yet. One of the things I like about the president's massive increase in military spending is the fact that we need the next generation of weaponry so we don't have to send our kids door to door to door without up-armored Humvees and banging on doors and running into IEDs and terrorist fire. I'd rather fight those wars by pushing buttons in Tampa. So at least we're beginning to catch up because we lost a lot of ground in the 8 years of Obama, in my opinion.
Absolutely. They've cut defense spending, by billions of dollars during the 8 years of the Obama administration. But even worse than that, they totally ignored the threat from China. In fact, I point out in Deceiving the Sky that the Obama administration from the White House directed every agency not to say anything critical about China, whether it's their cyber attacks or their military buildup. So even the Pentagon, which is required by law to publish an annual China military power report, was playing down this threat. And I can tell you that in the military sphere, for many, many years, our intelligence agencies, our intelligence analysts, the top officials. I had the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency tell me 20 years ago that China was not a threat. And I said to him, how can you say that? You have a country with nuclear weapons capable of nuking our cities, and you're saying it's not a threat. And I asked him why he said that, and he said it was basically because of what they told us. So they claim they're not a threat, therefore we've accepted this. It was astounding. And so I've been basically really beating the drum to highlight this threat from China, which I think is going to take all of America's resources to really confront them and to mitigate this threat. And it's not going to be an easy battle. We're basically in a new Cold War with China.
Well, that's pretty scary. But now I think the Chinese, I'm not sure President Xi, but he's the president for life. So I guess he's thinking he has enough time to do whatever he wants. And is he being advised, maybe wait till Trump's reelection. Let's see if he gets reelected before we ever consider any deal with America. We can suck it up, even though the economy is growing at the slowest level in 27 years, with currency at an 11-year low. Let's just wait and see what happens in November of 2020. Now, if that's their position, it'll stay as it is. But perhaps Donald Trump, knowing him as well as I do, I would anticipate his response to such thinking on their part is, one, I'm going to win. And when I do, in January of 2021, the cost just went up 35%.
Absolutely. In fact, the president just tweeted that out this week. He said, if the Chinese think they can wait me out and try to unseat me, he said, when I get reelected, it's going to be even tougher on China. And that's what I'm very hopeful for. Right now, he wants to deal. He wants to make a deal. He wrote the book on the art of the deal, but he's also not going to be rolled by the Chinese, and I think that's really key. In Deceiving the Sky, I interviewed a former businessman who spent 20 years in China dealing with the Chinese, and he said the first thing you have to understand about dealing with the Chinese is they're communists, and they adopt the communist morality, which is everybody's an enemy who's not a communist, who's not a Chinese communist in this case. And he said if you didn't understand that, you'd find out that the deals that the Chinese make are only valid the day that they shake hands. Once they do that, they come back later and say, oh, well, that deal was only valid for when we shook hands. I think conditions have changed. So it's going to be very difficult to deal with the Chinese, especially when you're dealing with the Communist Party of China, which is the dominant party there.
Well, that's pretty scary, too. Why does Beijing pursue policies and openly deceive Western leaders about their intentions? For example, look at the case of the deep state. Why did Peter Strzok, after being told that Hillary's server was being hacked in real time, in other words, everything that went on that server, anything sent from that server, any email from Hillary Clinton or anybody involved with her inner circle, they were getting it in real time. Now, we talked a lot about Russian interference, and as long as it was about Trump, it was fine, not about the Russian dossier with the media mob. They didn't care about Ukrainian influence that was designed to help Hillary Clinton. And they don't seem to care that top secret classified information on Hillary's server was sent to the Chinese in real time. And that's probably only the tip of the iceberg, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that whole investigation right now is the target of the special counsel at the Justice Department, is looking at all of these questions about the FBI's mishandling of the Clinton email investigation. You know that if it was you or I that had put classified information on a private server, we'd be doing time. But Hillary Clinton was allowed to skate, and there's obviously political influence involved in there, whether it was McCabe and Comey and the top ranks of the former FBI there that is now under investigation, under very close scrutiny.
You know, it is pretty incredible. All right, well, the book is phenomenal. We're putting it up on our website. It's called Deceiving the Sky, Inside Communist China's Drive for Global Supremacy. Just out this week, Bill Gertz, brilliant writer, investigative reporter, friend of the program for a long time. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Sean.
800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. Larry is in Vegas. K-Dawn. What's up, Larry? How are you, my friend?
How do you do, sir? It's an honor to allow me to speak on your program today. I appreciate all the things that you have done and many of your guests to expose the great community organizer.
Nice.
When you look at everything that's taken place, a lot of the things that's gone down here through the Democratic machine and its patronage organization, all this investigation stuff and things of that, all these people followed orders. And if it gets to any type of indictments or things like that, Barack Obama is obligated to protect Comey, Lynch, Lerner, Rice. All these things fall into one position. The chief executive officer had to give the order or someone that he designated to speak to these people. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, sir.
Listen, you don't have a counterintelligence investigation without Obama's knowledge. Strzok and Page text say Obama wanted to be informed every step of the way. I got to tell you, Bill, you're very impressive in terms of your knowledge of all of this. I'm just telling everybody, sit tight. We've not been wrong at all. We've nailed this from the get-go. The mob got it all wrong. That's why they're moving back to Stormy, but there has to be accountability. My only unknown is the evidence is there. It's overwhelming. It's incontrovertible. It all happened. Will we hold them accountable? Because if we don't, that means the country's in, I don't know how we survive with a dual justice system like that. Anyway, thank you. 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. All right, loaded up tonight. This deep state information is huge. We will bust through all of it. We got the Devin Nunes lawsuit. We got the ACLJ lawsuit. We got Tom Fitton's lawsuit. We've got Bastardi on how bad Charleston is getting hit. Now Wilmington is in the path of this Hurricane Dorian. We'll have the latest on that. And the media insanity and much, much more. 9 Eastern tonight, Hannity, Fox News. We hope you'll join us. See you at 9. Thanks for being with us. Back here tomorrow.
RCA Victor Television. One more day to Labor Day weekend, the traditional occasion for tasty outdoor barbecues or picnics.
all the obstacles and with all the enemies who are between me and...
Thank you.